Cool. Hello, can everyone hear me? Yep, awesome. Hello, I'm Tim. Next to me is Paris, as you can see. Unfortunately, Paris couldn't make it due to COVID shenanigans, so big thanks to the organisers here letting us do last-minute slide changes. I'm going to say we a lot because practice this with Paris. We hail from Tasmania. That's the little triangle island at the bottom of Australia, which is at the bottom of the world. Specifically, we're from Hobart, which is the little city at the bottom of the little triangle, the big island on the bottom of the world. It's lovely. Come down and visit. We've actually got good coffee, unlike Seattle. I knew that would work. So I just want to say first up, we're not accessibility researchers or experts. We're primarily just developers. We do actually have a HCI background. Both Paris and I have PhDs in information flow, essentially. So we do still do a bit of research. We do understand the concepts of research. But I think the main reason we're here is because we actually build a narrative tool, so middleware for game narrative and dialogue. It's called Yarn Spinner. That's not what this talk's about, but if you'd like to talk to me about that later, glad to talk about narrative tooling. I love talking about it. But it means we've had to become, I guess, experts in understanding how to present text, i.e. subtitles. So not so much a content warning, just more of a beware, I guess. There is going to be swearing in some of the slides, maybe a little bit of game violence, so on and so forth. I'll probably swear a little bit. Nothing, hopefully it's too bad. And also, I am going to have to pick on some games. I'm not trying to be mean to any games, and in fact, in almost every single example, it was later fixed in a patch or a later game. So the lessons are getting out there, but I do have to pick on some games, so I apologise in advance. So, what is a subtitle? That's actually the first question. Is this a subtitle? Is this a subtitle? Is this a subtitle? It's the only one. It was actually very funny. I had to go like, hey, can you move the little subtitle thing up the top? Because I'm giving a talk about subtitles and I can't have the subtitles on top of the subtitles. The good thing is, I would argue these are all subtitles. All of these are subtitles. They're ways of putting in text form the spoken word on the screen. Now, the little white text here, like square bracket, door opens, door closed, etc. These are not technically subtitles. These are captions. Subtitles is spoken word, captions are generic sound, is the difference. I'm going to kind of use the terms interchangeably because you should realistically be doing both. So why subtitle? Why bother doing this? What is the point? So this is the obvious, big, and most important one. Plenty of people are hard of hearing. Some, depending on which study you read, it's between 10 to 30% depending on your demographic. Just do it for this reason alone. If this isn't a good enough reason, I do have more, but please make this your main reason. So there's this quite good guide from the BBC where they actually have stats showing that quite a lot of people, this is for television, not for games, will actually turn subtitles on even if they have no sort of hearing impairment of any form. There is a more recent study which I found. This is from Stage Text, who does live performances, so musicals, plays, that sort of stuff. In the UK, they actually found in the 18 to 24 bracket, 80% of people will have subtitles. This meshes pretty well with what we can tell about games. This is from Ubisoft. I'm pretty sure most people have seen this tweet before, where it's sort of saying, in situations where subtitles are on by default, around 97% of players leave them on. In situations where they're not on by default, about half the players go out of their way to turn them on. Additionally, subtitles have been shown to actually improve both comprehension and retention. So comprehension, your ability to actually understand what's happening, and retention, your ability to then later recall what happened. Additionally, using subtitles plus audio increases comprehension and retention of either alone, especially so in foreign languages. And there's been some interesting studies into how you can actually use subtitles to help teach foreign languages over other techniques, and it has some potential interest in there. I can barely speak English, so I mean, I'm not going to talk about that one, but there is evidence to back it up. So overall, if for no other reason other than accessibility, people just seem to like them. So they're worth doing for that. However, I don't want to say subtitles are generally done bad, but they're generally done bad in games. So it's worth just taking a bit of a quick look through some of these common mistakes and the best way to fix them. Now, there's a really good GDC talk by Ian Hamilton. Just put your hand up if you know of Ian Hamilton, rather. Cool, decent chunk. Ian is an accessibility advocate in games, and he has a really good talk about subtitling, and it's well worth checking out on the Vault. We've got a link for it at the end of the slide, so don't worry about finding it now. So the first one is really small subtitles, like the subtitles that your ants would be reading. So this, is that even visible? Yeah. So this is from Wolfenstein 2. This is from Battlefront 2. This one's a little bit better because the contrast is higher, but it's still very, very small. This one's from Raid World War II. This, incidentally enough, is the one indies get better than AAA. Indie text by default is much bigger than AAA studios. No idea why that is. That's not to say AAA never does a good job. In general, Ubisoft just knocks it out of the park with subtitles. Not always, but in general they do, especially in the Assassin's Creed games, it's gold standard. So the solution is, and I now realize it's ironic that's a bit hard to see, so I'm going to read it out. If you have static text, i.e. your UI text, you want it to be approximately 32 pixels at 1080p. If it's going to be changing text, you want it to be around 46 pixels at 1080p. And you're going to have to adjust this on the fly depending on your size and your play area. This slide is stolen directly from Ian Hamilton's amazing GDC talk, because he did all the number crunching. I don't have the time to do that number crunching, he did it. So the next one is the fantastically extremely long lines that make it hard to read, where you go right to the edge of the thing. So this one from Call of Duty World War II, although this is kind of a common complaint I have with Call of Duty games. I love the Call of Duty games, but their subtitles are very long. This one's from Canarium. Now, plenty of games do it right. This is from Xenoblade Chronicles. They do a great job with the line length. They're very consistent about keeping it a fixed sort of number of characters. So the solution to this one is, luckily, very simple. It's basically press enter somewhere. And that's align your text sensibly. Look at how something looks. If it's too many characters long, just put a line break in there. So the next one is, of course, the even more text, making it really hard to see what's going on in the scene, let alone read the subtitle, and just all around being an unpleasant experience for the player and ruining the story, the mood, and everything, basically. No one would ever do this, right? This is from Hellblade, which, this isn't too bad. This is a lot of text, though. There's a lot of words going on here. This is one that indies are bad at. So this is Getting Over It by Bennett Foddy, which is actually a great game. Do recommend it, but subtitles very long. Cool. And this one's from Deus Ex. This one's also interesting because it has some contrast issues as a bonus. The solution here is really easy. Just don't do this. Please just keep it small. So in general, you want roughly 2 lines per subtitle max. You can go to 3, but try and keep it to 2. You want approximately 38 characters per line. Again, you can break these rules a little bit, but try and keep it this. This, incidentally, is for English. So if you're doing other languages, you are going to have to try and find out what they are. Like I said, I only speak English, so I don't even know how to start searching to find those. I do know back from some work I used to do in the mobile space, you would do the pseudo double length language, which is where you literally just double your length of all of your text, and that covers most circumstances. So that's another little trick you might want to consider. Then our fourth one is that came out so much better than I was hoping. Bad contrast. In particular, can you see the subtitle? It's there. So this is one of me very badly playing Battlefront. So the interesting thing is the contrast is fine until you start flying over all these complex, very gorgeous spaceships. And you got essentially a contrasting, changing background. My actual favorite thing about this one is the shape of the TIE fighter happens to be roughly the same length and perfect alignment with occasional subtitles. So you occasionally actually have the TIE fighter dip into the subtitle, and then your brain tries to map the subtitle to the tilt of the TIE fighter, which I quite like. So yeah. And I won't subject you to me playing Battlefield badly anymore. Battlefront, sorry. This isn't a bad example, actually. This one has too much text, but the contrast isn't too bad. The problem is the contrast background color they have is is the same color as the gun. So it is sort of mixing a little bit in with it. But this is sort of, we're getting into some nitpicking here. This one, which is really sad, because I really like Halo Wars. It's a very good game. But this is very hard to read. It's the what do they call it? Slip space drive. I can't remember what they call it. Drive effect, just completely destroying the poor subtitle, which is very sad, because it is a very beautiful scene. There's a couple of different solutions to this. One way I've seen used a bit, and can work, is you essentially add a shadow or like a border to the text. This does actually work pretty well. You do have to be careful though. There are some studies which show that for certain people, particularly dyslexic people, they have a much harder time reading this than before. So in general, it's better to just do this. And in fact, this is by far the most common thing you see anyway, because it's generally the easiest. You all know how to draw a box on the screen. So, because Bungie's our host, shout out to Destiny 2 for doing a really good job here. In fact, they even let you preview it. Bonus points for putting a terrible meme in as the display text. And the fifth common complaint is obscure line breaks. Because I was just congratulating Destiny, I'm now just going to pick on Destiny. I actually met the person who's responsible for this at lunch, so thank you for giving me the background into that. But this example isn't too bad. You can still read it. The better breakpoint is probably the me, but it's not too bad. However, this one from Breath of the Wild is really weird. So you got, and then you were taken to the shrine of resurrection. Here you now stand revitalized 100 years later. Not that you're necessarily going to read it like that, but your brain will sort of stagger on these line breaks like that. So try and keep them roughly to the natural sentence breaks. This one's from Ghost Recon. This is me playing badly again. This is particularly an NPC talking. The NPCs in Ghost Recon Wildlands have very unusual line breaking rules. So, A, it's really small. It starts fine. It starts good. But then it stops on the word is. Then stops on the word no, and then it actually finishes the sentence. So for what is about 40 words, it's got 3 different breaks. 3 of them are at non-sentence breaks, which is very unusual. I think it's probably just doing word fixed. Breakpoint is a good example of where they went, nope, this was bad, we fixed it. So, kudos to the team there. Cyberpunk 2077 actually does a pretty good job at line breaks. Not entirely sure what their approach is, whether it's manual, whether it's just they break on, what's that little dot character called again? Period. Sorry, I've got to keep remembering to translate everything into American. So line breaks are editorial. This means, unfortunately, someone at some point will have to go through, check the dialogue, break it up. This is also why this is a very common problem, because it is a very manual process. There's not any great algorithms that won't experience this sort of breaking. So you do need to give it some attention. Next is the fantastic poorly timed subtitles. And see, I actually went so fast, it didn't even finish. There we go. Now, this is normally due to lines that are very quick. So this is from, if we click, Wolfenstein New Colossus. Oh, by the way, the no audio is intentional here. It's to try and make you think more about the subtitle where possible. So some of these lines are quite, well, they're very small, but some of the lines, how long they last is actually quite readable. You can sort of spend enough time to read it. Then other ones that just like blip in and out in an instant. Like that one's fine, but this one is not, just disappeared. This is particularly true in the South Park fractured butthole, I'm not going to say that wrong, joke. There we go. And I think this one is actually a side effect of the fact that South Park characters in the TV show and the game, they speak really quick. Like they do just smash through words really, really fast. And the subtitles are timed to this, but that means they're going off the screen really, really quickly. So if you have any issues reading at all, these are going to be completely useless to you. Once again, to congratulate our hosts, this is something that Destiny has done really well with their timing. Their subtitles stick around a really nice amount of time. I would love, there we go, yeah. I would love to know exactly how they work out their timing. If someone from Bungie wants to tell me, I would be very much appreciative of that. Whether it's manually adjusted or if it's just real coincidence, because either way it's good. Sorry, I got bored capturing footage. But again, really, the subtitles last long enough that you generally will get enough time to read them. So again, unfortunately, the solution is manual. You just need someone to go through, check these subtitles, see how long they last. It's laborious, but there is no other way, or at least no other way I've seen. So these ones actually address the basic issues, and if you fix these, you kind of fix 99% of the issues people have with subtitles. So you need to worry about the size, the contrast, and the total amount of text. There are some more nuanced problems in particular to think about. In particular, most subtitle work is done on TV, film, traditional linear media. So something that's a bit annoying about games is we're not TV and film. So a lot of it either doesn't apply or needs to be tweaked, or in some cases just completely ignored. In particular, games have a UI. So TV have a lot more flexibility in their workable space to put subtitles. Games don't. This both reduces your available space, but it also forces a style on you that if you don't somewhat match, people will be mad. They'll be like, wow, the subtitles look out of place. So Sea of Thieves, in particular, which is a game I love, you're seeing the UI here. It's sort of very stylized parody. I'm just going to start a mission here, and they actually have to like bring down borders to create that sort of filmic quality that they're going for there. But then they need to wait for that to all go away before they can actually start showing the subtitles. So now we actually get the subtitles. And the subtitles in Sea of Thieves are, for the most part, very, very good. They've got some of the better defaults out there. But as far as I can tell, there's no way to customize them. So maybe I just missed them, but if someone knows how to customize subtitles in Sea of Thieves, let me know. Or just, you've seen enough of that. Now, the next issue is a phone is not a TV. Now, most people here, I'm assuming, are working on console games. Is that sort of roughly true? Can you put your hand up if you're working roughly in that tier of game? Yeah, okay. Which means the more traditional 10-foot interface makes sense and works, and that's what most of the research is from. But games cover the whole gamut. You've got mobile games, you've got Switch games, you've got computer games that will be played on a laptop, you've got computer games that will be played on a TV, so on and so forth. A lot of the research still assumes the 10-foot interface. There is some work into doing this, but there's not really good cold hard numbers you can look at of, hey, on a Switch, your fonts should be like this, unfortunately. There is some, but it's not necessarily easy to get to. And another weird quirk is our content is interactive. So TV and film have never had to work out how to let people select a choice in a game. We do have to do that. So in any narrative game where there's options to pick from, you need some way of doing it, and it has to work with the subtitling system. Even though it's not necessarily a subtitle, if it doesn't feel like it's part of the same system, people will get hella mad. The only real approaches we've seen to have come up with is you put them on a spin and you pick from a wheel, or you put them in a list and you pick from a list. We don't really seem to have many other approaches. This is one thing from a game called The Same Thing, which I kind of like, and it's very weird. So this is how you select the choices in this game. If it's gonna... Yeah. So you chose the weird choice. So it's one of those little games where you drop like a ball from the top and it bounces around the little pins and then it lands in the correct bucket. Obviously, I don't think this would work for every game. I'm just thinking back to like Mass Effect. I think people would be hella mad if you ended up not making out with Garrus because you put the pin in the wrong area, but it's an option. There is options out there we're not exploring. And games also are multiplayer. This is probably the least explored area, maybe. Games that have multiple players working in the same shared narrative world have to work out how to share the decision-making together. And that is very unique to games and very unexplored. I think one of the few games that's done a lot of interesting work in this is BioWare's The Old Republic, where I don't know how many people played it, but if you're very physically separate from each other, when one player starts a conversation, the other player needs to be there. But you can't just teleport a player, they'll get mad, they were doing a thing over here, they're killing 50 snork beasts or whatever, they're busy. Luckily in Star Wars there's holograms, so they project a hologram of your player. But this now has sort of narrative implications because you're not physically there. So in the game, BioWare actually made it that certain actions, like threatening people, can't be done by the player who's a hologram. And I thought that was really, really fascinating, and it's something that's, I would say, very unexplored because narrative games are hard, multiplayer games are hard. I have no desire to get into that field. But It's a very interesting one. So if people have insight into that, I'd love to know more. And finally, there's a concept in subtitles which I've seen referred to as many names. I'm going to call it dynamic subtitles, which is what I've seen it referred to, which is the idea is where you can position and adjust the subtitle based not only the speaker, but the context in what they're doing. Now, this is somewhat frowned upon in traditional media. The reason for this frowning uponness is because it's either a very manual, laborious process of positioning something over here, then moving it so you don't cover their face or whatever, or you need to do a lot of terrible editing on these weird subtitle formats because subtitle formats are all weird and terrible. But in a game, it's not easy, but it's very possible to get the screen space position of nothing, or nothing that's important. So you can actually do this. This is from Night in the Woods, which is an indie game. So this actually has two different dynamic subtitles. It's got one up the back, which is the TV, and it's got one floating above the main character's head. And it's not covering up anything that is important, and it can adjust and resize itself as needed. And that is not necessarily trivial depending on your game, but it's very possible depending on your game to do this, whereas it's practically impossible in a TV show. I don't think I've ever seen this in this style of subtitle in any AAA game. And I'm willing to bet that's probably because they're going for that filmic quality. But maybe there's a game out there. I would actually love an Assassin's Creed now. You got like giant floating subtitles above your head. Can someone make that happen for me? Thank you. Okay, so on to some different weird things. I think more so than TV shows, even though you should also do it in TV shows, video games have sound effects that are crucial to the gameplay, which means they need to be, well, technically captioned, but subtitled. So, I don't know if anyone's played this. This is Resident Evil Biohazard. So the player's sort of just finished a mission, they're now wandering around a space. There's a bunch of things to click on, but it doesn't really matter. So that phone, right? That phone call is actually needed to continue the mission. In fact, the game will not continue until you pick up and answer that phone call. But there's no subtitling for that phone call. So if this was purely silent, you would walk out of that room, spend 15 minutes being confused, and then go and complain on Reddit or whatever about how this game is bad. Or because there's just not like one of those little square brackets phone ringing sounds. So it's very important to do this. This is something Minecraft, I think, does actually really interestingly. So it is a little small, and I don't like how they've styled it, but the idea is really cool. So they're actually top to bottom in order of which they're occurring, and their arrows point to where the sounds are. So the cow going moo is straight ahead-ish, and the Minecraft rolling is, that side for all of you, as is the footsteps to all of this side. So you can actually sort of work out where the sounds are coming from as well as what the sounds are. Again, don't really like the style, really big fan of what they've done though. Now, for the most part, film and TV do still do this better than games. I think that's just because they've been doing it longer. See, bad line breaking. So I think it's purely just a side effect. They've been doing this a really long time. They understand the concept of subtitling, how it works, and what the best ways are to do it. Now, I mentioned it a couple times, there's a thing called the BBC Guide. It's updated fairly regularly. The latest version here is from July this year. It's very, very good. It's designed for a traditional linear media audience, though. So some of the assumptions in there are definitely for TV. So just you got to keep that in mind when you're reading it. But that's a bad animation. You should still read it. The reason you should still read it, again, link at the end, don't worry about it, is because it actually has some really great advice around how you handle situations you may not necessarily have thought of. Like, how do you describe floorboard creaking? Like, what do you actually say? And according to the guide, we go with subject plus active finite verb. And as you read this guide, you're like, yeah, that is better actually. Or this one, how do you handle animal noises? So if you're doing a documentary, you say lions roar. If you're doing a video game, you go, rawr. The thing I really like about this is it goes, however, in animation or a game, it may be more appropriate to convey animal noises phonetically. For example, lion roar would become roar. While I think they're correct, I really like the idea there's just a whole bunch of like stereotypical, the villains from Mary Poppins, the bankers, sitting in a room going, yes, what would those idiot gamer children need? I know that's not what they're doing, but that's where my brain goes. But they are correct. Roar is definitely more impactful from a game perspective. So we said a lot in a relatively short time, so let's go through the key takeaways. Convey the entirety of the sound experience. You need to put everything in the game. All sounds need to be captured in the subtitles and captions. Text needs to be readable and match the dialogue as closely as possible. Be faithful to the sound. Caption sound effects, any lyrics. Put hints on accents if they're important. Don't edit swear words. There's quite a lot of evidence, even in that BBC guide, that if you edit out swear words by bleeping them, it's considered heavily insulting or belittling to the reader. So don't do it. YouTube just started doing that, actually. Yay, YouTube. So YouTube's doing the thing that we have shown is bad for people to do. Surprising no one. Editorial decisions are essential. Some of these things are not going to be possible at the same time. Sometimes you can't fit all the line on at once. Sometimes you need to do a bad line break. Sometimes you need a line to go away too quick or too slow. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to work that out on the fly. It's about accessibility and UX. It's not just about the accessibility, even though that's really, really important. It's not just about the UX, even though I'm willing to bet that's also really important to people in this room. It's about both. And why you would ever use the argument for, oh, it's only about UX, or oh, it's only about accessibility as an argument for something feels pretty weak to me, but that's a different issue. Customization is vital. You need a variety of styles because you're not going to be able to default to something that everyone will like. So this is from a game, The Adventures of Bertram Fiddle. It's got a pretty good default text here, but they actually offer different parameters for changing it up how you want it to be. So it actually works really well there. You can change the font, you can add the speaker, so on and so forth. Customization ideally is vital. You should put it in. Very few games have it. More games are getting it, but please do put it in. Make it a priority. Font, text size, current speaker, and the background are the main ones. If you can get those, you'll hit almost every problem with subtitles. However, we do need to be consistent. If people could just agree on one set of terms for all these options, that would make my life so easy. It would make every developer's life so easy. It would make every player's life so easier. I don't care what they are. Just someone pick them, please. And finally, they shouldn't be an afterthought. It's not something that is just a free feature of your database of strings that you needed for VO recording. It's something in of itself that should be given a bit of thought. You spend a lot of time making these games beautiful. Don't let the subtitles be the thing that drags them down. Thank you. And I think I'm out of time.
So we don't have time for questions, but I'm going to combine 3 into 1 because they're all about the same thing, and just good luck for you. You can pick which side you want to answer. It's all about length. So if you have to deal with languages like German, or if you have to deal with additional information that need more space, like speaker name, emotional tag, closed caption, and multiple speakers. So how do you deal with that? Do you still try to do 2 lines max? How do you manage that?
So there's a few different options, and actually the BBC guide does go into details specifically about all of those mentioned. Again, TV specific. The general rule is you can use colors to indicate different speakers is one way. You can actually have the little, Bertram : thing like they had in The Adventures of Bertram Fiddle. You can actually break the 2-line rule if, like, the top line is just the character name, because our brains be interesting things. They're very good at understanding, this is the character name, this is the text. We're very good at picking that sort of stuff up. You can put them on sides. That also works. The 2 lines is essentially 2 lines per line of dialogue being presented as a subtitle, not 2 lines maximum, because if you're presenting much more than that, it'll look ugly anyway, so you shouldn't be doing it. Cool.
All right, well, thank you so much again.
Thank you. I'm around if you want to talk.